Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Please mute your mics so that I could kick off webinar. Thank you so much. I welcome you on behalf of Development Communications Network, Devcom Pakistan, for another webinar that is very important in the given scenario and circumstances in the region. And that is Pakistan-Iran diplomatic relations that we have over the decades. And at this moment, I believe it is going to be a very crucial and imperative to develop trade and play its role in the regional politics and a strategic situation that is being developed. And we will be looking after opportunities that can be converged into a very meaningful role. And our participants today are Senator Mushahid Hussain Sayyid, Chairman, Senate Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs, and the other panelist from Pakistan is Ambassador Asif Durrani Sahab, who has been ambassador to Iran, and Lieutenant General retired Muhammad Asad Durrani Sahab, who is ex chief of ISI and geopolitical analyst and very bold and vibrant, according to Mushahid Hussain Sayyid, very thinking journal. So that's great. And we will also have some comments from Riham Khan, who is a geopolitical commentator and political activist, basically, that I call her, and perhaps she also believes in political activism. And from Tehran will be joining us Dr. Mashallah Shakri Sahab, who has been very popular ambassador in Islamabad. As I was mentioning earlier, like he was the only ambassador I could remember the name of in 3 decades of my journalism in Pakistan, because he was very proactive, very cordial with the local people, and the cultural events and the social events that he had organized in Pakistan during his tenure, I believe was very meaningful social contact and cultural contact between Iran and Pakistan. He will be joining us very soon. And there is a confusion of time schedule that for this webinar. We were in Pakistan, it was 12:30, but unfortunately there is some communication mistake on the part of Tehran's time that is written on the banner. And sorry for that. And we have also joined by Director of South Asian Studies of Tehran International Studies and Research Institute, Dr. Someh Murawati, and the Mashallah Shakir Sahab is not around us so far. The third panelist that we will have from Tehran is Iran's cultural counselor, Hassan Khazai Sahab, and this is it. And I also thank you all the participants that have joined us. Mushahid Hussain Sayyid Sahab, Iran and Pakistan has very deep relationships, but most of the people, as I asked, like, what is the difference between the diplomatic relationships before 1979 and after 79? As all of us know, that 1979 was the year of Islamic Revolution in Iran. And some people say, before 1979, the relationships were more, what would we say, more cordial, but afterwards, gradually, though Pakistan supported Iran revolution, Pakistan was the first one to support Iran's revolution, but gradually, instead of more cordial relationships, there were some hitches in it, and but in the recent years, we have seen more steps are being taken to revive the traditionally cordial relationship. That's it from my side. Senator Mushahid Hussain sir, please go ahead with your initial deliberations on it.
Thank you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and good afternoon from Islamabad to our brothers and sisters in Iran. It's a great pleasure to be here with the Munir Saab and the distinguished and august company of panelists, including General Durrani Saab. And you forgot to mention General Durrani Saab has also been ambassador to Germany and Saudi Arabia. So he also has diplomatic experience, not just experience in intelligence, but also in other things. And Asif Durrani Saab is an old friend. He and I were colleagues in the Muslim. He was heading the bureau in Balochistan when I was the editor. And then he made the transition into diplomacy when I made the transition into politics. So it's good to see Durrani Saab, mashallah, going strong. And I believe a very famous lady has also joined us from London. The lady is the famous Reham Khan Saiba. Unko bhi meri taraf se bada Assalamu alaikum. And Khanum Sumaya Marawati, Assalamu alaikum and Halishu Mahbub. I hope everything is fine in Tehran on COVID. And we're facing a common crisis of the COVID-19, and both Pakistan and Iran are trying to combat it as best as we can, hopefully. I would like to just briefly mention, starting from what Mr. Munir Ahmed said, and Munir Saab has things done with the things with a difference, out of the box, as they say. And this is a timely initiative on Pakistan-Iran relations. Yes, we were the first to recognize the Islamic Revolution and the Islamic Republic of Iran, which was under the leadership of Imam Khomeini. And Iran was also, by the way, the first country to recognize Pakistan when we became an independent country on 14th of August, 1947. So there is a certain history of interest. And please do not forget the cultural compatibility. Had the British not ruled India, perhaps we would all be speaking the same language, meaning the lingua franca would have been Farsi, because Farsi was the court language in our part of the world during the days before the British Empire took over. And also there is a very common compatibility between Iran and Pakistan on Iqbal-e-Lahori, because we consider Dr. Allama Iqbal as the national poet of Pakistan, and Iqbal-e-Lahori is also highly rated there. I still remember when I was a journalist, and in July 1986, when Ayatollah al-Uzma, Sayyid Ahmad Khamenei, now the Rehbar of Iran, he was then the president of Iran. He came to Pakistan on the invitation of General Ziaul Haq. And he spoke about Iqbal-e-Lahori given by General Zia when I was president. Then also he made a historic speech in Lahore. And similarly came to Pakistan, Sayyid Khatami also was an expert in on Iqbal issues. And I remember visiting Tehran in the early days of the revolution, and there was a war going on with Iran, Iraq, and Iraqi aggression had been launched, and also Imam Khomeini was still living. There used to be the Namaz-e-Jummah in Tehran University grounds, and there used to be, I attended that very regularly. And I remember the slogan, Dr. Sumaya, you might remember, Khudaya, Khudaya, ta inqilab-e-Mehdi, fazl-e-man Khomeini. And also they say, when the war was there, Jang, Jang, ta peruzi, war, war until victory, against Saddam, of course. And the man who used to do the slogans was a man. I said, who is this person? And he used to rile up the crowd before the khutbah of the main leader. And he said, his name is Engineer Murtaza Far, and he is the minister for slogans. So, you know, he was a very dynamic person. And so I have great memories of Iran, traveling those days as a journalist. I visited all parts of Iran on the bus. I went to, and I was there at a moment in 1982 when Khurramshahr, or Khunishahr they used to call it, and Abadan were liberated from the Iraqis. And I was in Abadan, and the big battle took place, and I was there to see that liberation. So Iran has been through a lot of struggle, and Pakistan has always stood by Iran. In the current context, when we talk of Pakistan-Iran relations, I think, number one, we should be very clear. There is no fundamental conflict of interest between Iran and Pakistan. We have no disputes as such. We have no conflict of interest. And there was a question asked by Munir Ahmed Saab, which is pertinent, that relations before 79 and after 79. Before 79, it was the Shah's Iran, and we were all then in the American camp. And even Iran-Saudi relations were very good. Iran-Pakistan relations were very good. So we were part of the same bloc, so to speak. But 79 changed the dynamics, not just the revolution in Iran. 79 was a turning point on many things, because there was the Soviet invasion and occupation of Afghanistan. There was the revolt in Saudi Arabia also, which the Makkah Mosque takeover in November 79. And then the Americans also launched their rapid deployment force. So a new kind of Cold War began, in which Iran was targeted. And Pakistan as a neighbor was under a lot of pressure. But we resisted those pressures. Even in the days of the so-called Afghan jihad, we stood by Iran. We did not allow our territory to be used against Iran, although there were pressures from the Americans and other countries on us. In the current context, looking forward, I think the 3 or 4 factors are a very major plus factor to strengthen, to revitalize, and rejuvenate our relationship. Number 1 is regional connectivity, CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. China is a best friend, and China is also now the very good friend of Iran also, the Iran-China deal, which we have welcomed. And Pakistan's future focus and current focus is on regional connectivity. And Pakistan is emerging as a hub of regional connectivity, linking up South Asia, Central Asia, China, Iran, and Afghanistan. So in that context, the Iran-China agreement is a plus for CPEC, because we have a border with Iran via Balochistan. And the centerpiece for CPEC, as you know, is the Gwadar port, and while Iran has the Chabahar port. And with China playing a role in Iran's development, as it is already in Pakistan's development, we see that it could be a force multiplier. And we also feel that this will cover our Western plans in security terms, and also take Gwadar port forward, and also Chabahar forward, because we see them as ports which are not competing with each other, which are complementary to each other. The second element is that, which I think will be a plus for Pakistan-Iran relations, is that the Americans have decided to withdraw from Afghanistan. Lock, stock, and barrel, as they say in English, meaning what we had said long time ago, they'll cut and run. That's basically what they're doing. So there could be problems in Afghanistan. There's no national government, no government of national unity. And this could be a recipe for more instability and volatility in Afghanistan and the region. So in that context, Pakistan and Iran, which have both hosted about 5 million Afghan refugees for the last 40 years together, we should be very clear that our cross-border management, our cross-border cooperation against terrorism should be strengthened. And I'm very happy to note that relations between the military establishments of Iran and Pakistan and the security and intelligence establishments of Iran and Pakistan have been there. Our army chief has been there twice. The Iranian army chief also came. And this was the first visit after General Mohsen Rezai, who was the head of the Pasdaran and Inqilab, the Islami Revolutionary Guard Corps. He came in 1991 at the invitation of General Beg. But after that, this was, in 30 years, the first visit by an Iranian army chief. And our chief of ISI also went there. Their chief of what they call them, Italat, intelligence, also came. So, you know, it's important that this relationship between the two security organizations has been there. And I, in my own humble way, have tried to push it. When I was chairman of the Defense Committee, I invited my counterparts in the Defense and Security Committee of the Iranian Majlis. And after our dialogue, we had recommended that we should have a close security and defense relationship with Iran, because we have no conflict of interest in what, and if other people are concerned, we are not concerned about Iran the way the West is. So I think that is the second element which is there. And the third element, which is I think is also important, is that we are part of the larger Muslim countries also. We have common worldviews and values. And these days, the Biden administration is putting a lot of pressure, not just on Iran, but also on Saudi Arabia. So, and we welcome the warming up or the normalization of Saudi-Iran relationship also, because we have good relations with both Saudi Arabia and also with Iran. And we feel that Pakistan has tried to play the role of a bridge. We can continue to do that. And if Iran and Saudi Arabia are on the same page on issues like Palestine, which they have been of late because the OIC meeting was held, and on the issue of occupied Kashmir, and we thank Iran for their resolute support on the issue of Indian occupied Kashmir. In the khutbah and the Namaz Jummah, they have been mentioning that. There was a pinned tweet of the Rahbar Ayatollah Luzma Khamenei Sahib also on this issue. Jawad Zarif Sahib also, when he came, he mentioned that. Hassan Rouhani Sahib, when he came, also he mentioned that. So I think that this can be also the regional situation is quite conducive to strengthening this bond between Pakistan and Iran. And I'd like to mention that the last visit of the Iranian leadership to Pakistan was in March 2016. President Hassan Rouhani, and I'd met him then also with Jawad Zarif Sahib, whom I know quite well and is an old friend from think tank. Group about 60 Iranian businesspeople and entrepreneurs. And they came and I gave them a talk at the Serena Hotel on CPEC and how CPEC we would like to expand. But unfortunately, other issues came into play and we could not take that to its logical conclusion. So I feel that Iran has a lot of interest in trade between Pakistan, in regional trade. And I think that there have been issues about also opening of letters of credit because of the sanctions and other areas. But I think if China was able to circumvent the sanctions, and the European Union also has been planning a way forward to bypass the sanctions, I think we should try to work that out so that trade between Pakistan and Iran can resume. Because in my talk to the Iranian entrepreneurs, which was for 2 hours at during the visit of President Rouhani, there was tremendous interest on CPEC, on China-Pakistan economic cooperation, including Iran, that Pakistan, China, Iran, as well as Pakistan and Iran. And we also have, I would like to mention here, a spiritual bond with Iran, because a lot of the holy sites for Muslims are also in the Islamic Republic of Iran. And you can see a large number of pilgrims from Pakistan also go to Iran. So given that context, we feel that Iran-Pakistan relations should be there. I was the first journalist from Pakistan after the revolution in Iran to start writing regular columns. I used to write for the Tehran Times. And Madame Sumai will remember there was a gentleman by the name of Hussein Musawiyan, who later on became your chief negotiator on the nuclear program, and then later on ambassador to Germany. He was the editor of the Tehran Times. And I used to write regularly for the Tehran Times. So we have had this old relationship. And this relationship is not just a state-to-state, government-to-government, or military-to-military. It's also a people-to-people bond, because there is cultural compatibility between the Jamhuriyat Islami Iran and the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. And we feel that this bond, based on congruence of worldviews, values, and common interests, should be further strengthened, inshallah. And we look forward to this kind of interaction. And I'm looking forward to a good discussion. And I am missing my old friend, Excellency Mashallah Shakari. He was one of the most successful and proactive Iranian ambassadors to Pakistan. And I wish all of you good luck in Iran in combating the coronavirus, in combating COVID-19. This is a common challenge of humanity to humanity, which requires a collective response from all of us. Stay safe, God bless you, and all the best. And Pakistan-Iran Dosti Zindabad. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Senator Mushahid Hussain Sayyid Sahab, for your wonderful insight to the relationships that we have and the prospects for future collaboration in strategic defense and trade, and playing role in the regional connectivity and also in the Muslim world. Thank you very much. I can't see Mashallah Shakri Saab. Shakri Saab, Ambassador Shakri Saab, are you there? No. No, I can't see now. I would like to go to Ambassador Asif Durrani Saab, to you. And as you have seen yourself, while you were ambassador in Tehran, that the cultural bonds and you have been promoting Pakistan and Iran relations as well. How do you see in the present era, having the challenges of today, Pakistan, Iran can contribute to each other's strengthening and also for the peace in the region and revival of the Muslim world? Ambassador Asif Durrani Saab, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Munir Saab. Thank you for organizing a very an important seminar with regard to Pakistan-Iran relations and then opportunities and convergences that exist between the two countries. I take this opportunity to pay my respects to Senator Mushahid Hussain. It was an honor working with him. He was my editor while I was based in Balochistan in Quetta. And then again, Janad Rani, again, as rightly you said, a thinking journal, an intellectual, and not only a journal, but also a diplomat. So it has been a pleasure interacting with him for the past many years. And clarity on issues. And we also are the part of our informal group on Afghanistan. So I think we should, Janasa, we should invite someday to rather regularly to Senator Mushahid Hussain to pick up his brains, because Afghanistan is now getting hot. I think he is the man who can guide us.
Hotter and hotter.
Yes. So, and let me begin with by saying that how pleased I am that it was an honor to serve Pakistan's ambassador in Tehran. I had 2 wonderful years spent there. In fact, I served twice. Once from 98 to 2001, when I was first secretary. And I have seen Iran changing during these 2 decades. While Iranian revolution is more than 4 decades old and it has consolidated itself, but at the same time, I have seen so many changes at the political and social level, and Iran progressing over the years. So the best thing which we can emulate is that Iran has attained 97% literacy rate. Iran is a leader in primary health. As per the WHO's estimates, they are #1 as far as primary health is concerned. Iran, we can learn from Iran as far as cleaning our cities are concerned. The most clean country in the world, if I can say, without a doubt, is Iran. So these are the things which we can learn from our Iranian brothers and sisters, how to manage it. Other issues are there when we talk about political issues and all that. But let me say that the strength of Pakistan-Iran relations is that the 2 countries have no dispute, although they may differ in perceptions on specific issues. Secondly, both have always cooperated bilaterally and at the international forums. I can quote one example. In 2008, Pakistan supported Iran in IAEA while India cast a negative vote against Iran. So, as rightly pointed out by Senator Mushahid Hussain, that there have been first. Iran was the first to recognize when Pakistan got independence, and we were the first to recognize Iranian revolution in 1979, and this relationship continues. So there have been certain misperceptions also in Pakistan that our relationship have gone sour. Same voices we hear at times in Iran. But when you look at deeper and when you look at closely, then as I said, there are no disputes between the 2 countries. It was Iran's request that for the first time in 2017, we raised Southern Command of the Frontier Corps to deploy troops along the Iranian border at Iran's request. So we had so much trust in Iran that we never deployed our troops along the Iranian borders. So I think we should, when we talk about certain, laws in our relationship, we should keep in mind that our relationship, even at the lowest stage, they have been always stable, and we trust each other. And that's the hallmark, and we should be proud of that. Then, and then Pakistan fully supports, we should not forget, Iran's right to access nuclear technology for peaceful purposes, and the US rejoining of the nuclear deal, a joint comprehensive program of action without conditions. So these are the pillars on which Iran respects us, we respect Iran. Then both the countries face terrorism and separatism, at times foreign inspired. Both live in insecure neighborhood and face varying degrees of external pressures. While from the beginning of its revolution, Iran had to face the wrath of the Americans, Pakistan has been facing Indian hostility and external pressures due to the Afghanistan situation, whether emanating due to the former Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan or American war on terror. But at the same time, let me also say that the Iran-Saudi rivalry has come as a big challenge for Pakistan's diplomacy. Iran has appreciated Pakistan's neutral stance on Yemen, but it caused irritants in Pakistan-Saudi relations. A Saudi-Iran rapprochement is urgently needed to lower tensions in the Middle East. Now, with regard to Afghanistan, as rightly pointed out by Senator Mushahid Hussain, Americans are going out. So there'll be a vacuum. But at the same time, we also fear that there could be chaos and it may lead to civil war, as we had witnessed after the withdrawal of the Soviet troops and fall of Najibullah and Mujahideen taking over. So there was no respite, and we thought that there would be peace. It never materialized. So here again, peace in Afghanistan is another critical issue that affects both the countries. Close coordination between the two countries can give Afghan stakeholders a loud and clear message to sue for peace. I know for sure that there's a close interaction between the foreign ministries of Iran and Pakistan on one issue, and there have been regular meetings. And hopefully that at the regional level also, there will be an understanding among the immediate neighbors of Afghanistan to stabilize things once the American troops withdraw from Afghanistan. Let me also touch about the bilateral relationship, which actually gives substance to this brotherly relationship, and that is actually trade. So bilateral trade has been nominal for many reasons, but the major problem has been its dollar-based banking system for Pakistan. Our banks have been reluctant to deal with Iran because of fear of American sanctions. I was involved in negotiations in 2017. State Bank of Pakistan and Bank-e Markazi Iran, they signed a currency swap agreement under which after every 3 months, the two countries would reconcile their trade. But again, Pakistani banks have been reluctant. Reason being, again, I said that our banking system is dollar-based, and they, in fact, they were clearly said that if any word which appears by the name of Tehran or Mashhad or something, so Americans would block the transaction. So this has been a big challenge. So what we can do is that when we say currency swap, then we have to have exclusive banks to open only in rupee account. They don't deal with dollar, and then we deal with Tuman in our Riyal in Iran. That can work between the two countries. And then, so this is something which we have to look at it. Then Iran-Pakistan gas pipeline is a victim of American sanctions on Iran, as foreign investors have been reluctant to undertake this project. And this is going to cost somewhere between $2.5 billion to $3 billion. So there's no dearth of political will, but actually from where we can get the investment, that's the problem. Then despite these challenges, the past 2 decades data shows that the trade balance has been in Iran's favor. There has been a willingness in the Pakistan government and with Iran in a meaningful trade relationship. The two countries can take several steps to increase bilateral trade. And here I give some suggestions. Firstly, one way to overcome difficulties in enhanced trade would be to barter trade through border markets. In this regard, the opening of border markets at Gabrimdan and Pishiman is a practical way of strengthening bilateral trade to the mutual benefit. And through border markets, we can also skip all those sanctions, whether I mean, it's American or any other country, but it's mostly American sanctions. So there is a way. Secondly, the two countries can address tariff and non-tariff barriers by entering into a free trade agreement, FTA, which has been under consideration of the Iranian government for many years. So Iran has to come. Right now, the GSP, which we have been, in fact, following, is actually moving with a snail's pace. So there are items which both the countries do trade, but they are very restricted. Third, improved connectivity, as again Senator Moshad Hussain pointed out, especially road and rail links between the two countries and the entire eco-region can catalyze bilateral and intra-eco trade. And this is something we have to look big in strategic terms, in the geostrategic terms and geoeconomic terms, that how we can integrate not only Pakistan and Iran, but the region, Central Asia and the Middle East and North Africa, MENA region, that how we can do because of our geographical advantage. Fourth, tourism has great potential, which can be tapped and further promoted. Already approximately 200,000 Pakistani pilgrims visit Iran every year. However, the number of Iranian tourists is almost negligible. Last year, only 5,000 Iranian nationals visited Pakistan. Now, to our misfortune, we don't have those Imamzadas in Pakistan. I wish that we had those Imamzadas in Pakistan, so our Iranian brothers or Iraqis or from Syria, they could have visited us. But the other visitors, mostly Iranian visitors, they head towards West or other countries. So, but that is their, sovereign right. But again, we can, and there's a need to promote. And I think back home here in Pakistan, we need to improve those facilities which can attract tourists. Fifth, Pakistan and Iran can explore cooperation in technology and health sciences, including joint ventures. I think we can, there's a tremendous scope in the health sciences and in technology. Both Iran has done wonderful successes. They have got wonderful successes in technology in many fields. So I think there's a tremendous scope. Also in the health sciences, they have been putting up a lot of resources in research and development in health sciences. So that is also very important. We can collaborate. Sixth is the cooperation in the defense technology sector. This is another untapped area that the two countries could explore, even if certain quarters may raise objections. I will not go into the details, but there's a tremendous scope. And seventh, in the cultural arena, the two countries can explore cooperation in the fine art, especially cinemas. Iran is a leader in cinematography. They have reached up to the Oscars. Their movies are wonderful. So I think Pakistani cinema is also now, taking off. They have, it has been revived. So I think this is an area which can promote cultural cooperation between the two countries. Perhaps maybe joint ventures, or perhaps there could be investments, or perhaps there could be, exchange of actors, writers, and directors. And finally, I think Iran's participation in China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, to which Senator Moshad Hussain also alluded to, can further strengthen economic and trade cooperation between the two neighbors. It can prove to be a stepping stone for greater economic integration of the region, ranging from Central Asia to the Middle East and North Africa. And we also, are part of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Right now, Iran is an observer. Hopefully, it will be a full member. If that is there, then I think the circle would be complete. And in Shanghai Cooperation Organization, where we have India, so if India and all that, when you talk about the economic integration on a larger scale, then India, China, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Central Asian states, and Russia. Just imagine what kind of an energy, economic and military and energy it can possess, how much potential this has got. It can actually divide geographically the whole world from east and west because of this issue. So think about it, and I think there's a potential. So we can, I think, have great potential.
Please stay with me.
I stopped, and I would be very much interested to listen to the wisdom of our Iranian friends. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Asif Durrani Saab. Mashla Shakir Saab is with us on WhatsApp, and I just spoke to him, and he is facing some connectivity problem while we are discussing regional connectivity, and and I will ask him, Ambassador Mashallah Shakri Saab, to speak from WhatsApp, and from WhatsApp.
Sir, do you have my?
Sir, just a minute, Mashallah Shakri Saab. Just switch off your video, please. Just a minute. Ambassador Shakri will be on audio from WhatsApp to Zoom. This is what I just I can do at the moment. Mashallah Shakri Sahab, can you listen to me? Mashallah Shakri Sahab, can you listen to me? Sorry for bothering you at the moment, and because we are facing some technical problem. Ambassador Shakri, please. Hello, please. Shakri Saab, can you listen me?
Yeah, I'm listening you, but I couldn't have the picture.
No problem, because you will be on audio, not on picture, not on video.
We can hear you loud and clear, sir.
Ambassador Shakir Saab, everyone is listening to you. Please go ahead. Dear participants, we have Ambassador Mashallah Shakri on WhatsApp call, and I will request him to please speak to the participants on the subject matter. Mashallah Shakri Saab, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. And I should apologize in advance for the discrepancies and for the insufficiency of our technical availability here. And I should say Assalamu alaikum to everybody on the other side, and our Pakistani friends and our friends in Abu Moser Institute in Tehran. Well, I will go directly to the subject. If you hear me once again, please confirm.
Yes, everybody is listening to you. Everyone can listen to you, sir.
Yes, thank you so much. So I'll go directly to the issue, and I say some literature in Pakistan. Quote Quaid-e-Azam, the founder of Pakistan, while he appointed Raja Ghaznafar Ali Khan as the first ambassador of Pakistan to Iran, highlighting Iran as a land that cradled a civilization, culture, and a rich history. This historical background that was rightly indicated by Quaid-e-Azam has continuously been an origin of exchange between Iran and its many neighbors, in particular the Muslims in the subcontinent. The Muslims, as a large non-Arab Islamic community in South Asia, have been in exchange with Iran. It is not irrelevant if we say Persian culture and Persian language and literature once were the elements by virtue of which the religion of Islam was introduced to some part of South Asia, particularly to the region that is now known as Pakistan. Even now, Persian scripts have remained as undeniable sources and references of historical texts and literature in Pakistan and India. Persian words, proverbs, and poetry have contributed to Urdu language more than any other language. Creation of Pakistan in 1947 brought with itself a new landscape on eastern side of Iran. All in all, this new geographical configuration led to a further cordial relations between the two nations, which was epitomized in some historical events, most importantly in 1947, 1948, 1965, 1971, 1979, 2001, and so on. Since 1947, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the founder of Pakistan, had successfully advocated a policy of fostering cordial relations with the Muslim world and Iran in particular. I may take the liberty and quote from a paper published by National Institute of Historical and Cultural Studies in Islamabad, where the Pakistani author says, just after its creation, Pakistan had to face the fear of being overwhelmed by one neighbor because their leadership never recognized the idea of an independent Muslim state. Another important state in the neighborhood had raised the Afghanistan stunt just after the announcement of partition plan. Unfortunately, both the states started attacks on ideological, geographical, and diplomatic frontiers. Pakistan shares most of its land frontiers with India and Afghanistan. Thus, in view of the aforesaid fact, Pakistan had to depend heavily on friendly relations with the only other country, Iran, with whom about 1/6 of its border meet. Iran and Pakistan have close links through centuries, and close social, cultural, and spiritual ties were further strengthened between the sister dominions by the establishment of Pakistan. Iran had no claims on Pakistan territories, unlike some other neighbors. From the defense point of view, yes, sir?
No problem, sir. Please go ahead.
Yes, from the defense point of view, all the naval bases and airfields of Pakistan were unsafe from an aggression. Thus, the only route left for essential defense supplies could be Iran. Well, now I finish with the quote of our Pakistani author and continue my test. No doubt, in response to the exigencies of the Cold War era and the convergence of strategic objectives facilitated by Western Bloc and the United States on top, helped in building a foundation for Iran-Pakistan relationship of the past. Reciprocal trips by the leaders of the two nations, membership of both the countries in regional organizations and alliances such as RCD, Baghdad, and CENTO Pact are vivid examples of the mutual interest reinforced by cultural similarity and absence of any tense point in their past relationship. The status quo in the region changed as a consequence of the war of 1971, invasion in Afghanistan, revolution and end of monarchy system in Iran, and some more successive offshoots of the aforementioned developments. The two nations of Pakistan and Iran coexisted together in the light of all the developments in the geopolitics of the region, and no major change or deviation from the common path were observed in the course of past decades. However, if I'm right to focus on the level of economic cooperation between Iran and Pakistan, I may conclude that we are yet distant from optimum goal. There may be several reasons that had led us to this position despite the huge potentials in the economies of each side. One, in the field of energy supply, our IP project is left incomplete, while the progress of project on the Iranian side is far ahead of what has been done on Pakistani side. This fact, in the light of Pakistan demand for energy, is not a good news. The same could be mentioned about transmission line for electricity transfer to Pakistan from Iran. One could guess the level of suffering of people, in particular inhabitants of Balochistan, as a result of power outage. On several occasions, leaders and top officials of both the countries have reiterated on the importance of cooperation in energy field, including electricity transfer from Iran. Although the connectivity is of paramount importance for better trade, communication, and people-to-people relation, the road and rail linkages between the two countries by long use and low level of maintenance is underperformed. The Quetta-Zahedan rail linkage is a century-long linkage. 3, there is no direct flight between Islamabad and Tehran, and one can speak or write volumes about the adverse effect of this disconnectivity. 4, the same could be unfold about maritime cooperation and fabric optic connectivity. As for my information, Iran has extended its fiber network up to the border with Pakistan. At this level, I can guess that in response to my assertion, as of always, some may raise the question of regional state and extra-regional power over and covert impress and influence on Pakistan. And some may raise the issue of sanction on Iran. For this part, I may again take the liberty to say that many of our neighbors, as of Turkey, Iraq, Afghanistan, Azerbaijan, UAE, even presently are enjoying a good volume of trade despite of sanctions imposed on Iran. For example, the volume of our annual trade with Iraq stands at $10 to $12 billion. Turkey estimated to be $5 billion. With Afghanistan, we have trade of $3 to $5 billion annually, and with India, $3 billion per annum. Though it has been lowered tremendously, but still it stands as $3 billion, and with Azerbaijan of order of $1 billion. These figures are in the light of COVID-19, the sanction, superpowers disapproval, and regional state dismay. I may further request the participants to take the past into perspective and see if at any time Pakistan has been subjected to a sanction. If so, how others, including Iran, dealt with this problem. Our assessment indicates that the two economies of Pakistan and Iran complement each other. While Pakistan is an exporter of textile, agricultural products, including rice, variety of citrus and mangoes, Iran is supplier of petrochemicals, building materials, dairy products, and so on. Therefore, both the economies could complement each other due to proximity and high market and demand. The value that a secure and continuous supply of gas can add to the economy and industry of Pakistan is far beyond the amount of loans that can Pakistan receive from international and regional institutions at their precept and at their behest. I may further add to this concept that the strategic importance of this connectivity bestowed to Pakistan is parallel to its economic added value. Sir, by this, I will conclude my discussion with you and the deliberation, and I am waiting for any question. But prior to anything, I may once again apologize for the shortcoming on our side. Thank you very much, sir.
No problem. Thank you so much, Dr. Mashallah Shakri Saab, former ambassador to Pakistan, for your wonderful thoughts on improving Pakistan-Iran diplomatic relationships, given the scenario and the situation at the moment. And thank you so much. But Iran-Pakistan's trade volume is 392 million, where Pakistan export to Iran only 23 million. That is very low figures at the moment, but we need to improve. Any participant, if like to ask any question, please ask, so that I could ask Mashallah Shakri Saab. I can ask that question on behalf of you. Please go ahead if anyone has to. Any question? Unmute your mic and please ask, so that I could pass on your question to. Senator Mushahid Hussain Saeed Saab has a question. Please go ahead, sir.
Assalamu alaikum, Excellency Mashallah Shakri Saab, and for a very thoughtful and a very clear presentation. I would like to ask Your Excellency two questions. You think that, number one, what are the prospects of the restoration of the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action with the US, the Iran nuclear deal, in your view? And the second question is, how are the prospects for Iran-Saudi normalization moving forward? And do you also feel that apart from the threat of US sanctions, there were other impediments which were blocking the Pakistan-Iran economic relationship? You mentioned very rightly, and people forget that the electricity provided to Gwadar, it comes from Iran, 74 megawatts every day. Iran gives us 100 megawatts of electricity every day, for example, which serves the Makran coast. So I think that the prospects of trade are tremendous. And you mentioned Iran-Afghanistan trade at $3 to $5 billion, and ours is just so small figure. So I would like to have your insights on these issues. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Ambassador Shakri Saab, Mushahid Hussain Saeed Saab has asked about the revival of the Joint Comprehensive Cooperation Plan, like how it could, and secondly, about the US sanctions. Would you like to deliberate upon these two things?
Yes, sir. First of all, please convey my regards, and Mr. Mushahid Hussain hearing me, I say a very warm Assalamu alaikum, and my good wishes for Mr. Mushahid Hussain and his family. I am missing his voice, his face, as it's a long time that I have not met him, but I really would like to meet him at some occasion, somewhere,
sure.
And hopefully either in Tehran or in Islamabad. The JCPOA discussion with the 4+1, or they say 5+1 now, is going on in Iran, and we have reached very good conclusion, though the things have not come to picture. And but anyway, the taboo is the initial deal was broken by United States, and US mistrust is anyway the cause of this current position. Initially, we have indicated that while US had withdrawn from the JCPOA, Now they have to re-establish all the facilities proclaimed and stipulated in the JCPOA before, and whatever has been subjected to extra sanction has to be nullified by them, and we shall see the result of that or verify the outcome of that in our system, either monetary or technically or a trade relation with the others. And as far as the information that we received from our delegation in Vienna, it is very positive, very hopeful, and they are at a very good level of compromise. And China and Russia are, as always, supporting Iranian stance. Well, we are going to face a presidential election on 18th June, just very, very near, maybe 3 weeks from 4 weeks from now. And that's also going to be a very pivotal element in designing the future of our position with JCPOA. But all in all, include everybody, all the officials, including the Supreme Leader of Iran, have already clarified their stance towards this JCPOA, and now it is US to relax and ease the situation. We are hopeful in one word, and let us see what will come out. And what was the second question?
About the US sanctions.
No,
I
about
think
Iran-Saudi relations. Iran-Saudi
Iran-Saudi relations. Another question of Mushahid Saab was like about Iran-Saudi relations.
Yes, we and the Saudi officials are in a little I can say unpropagated discussion, and we see that the Saudis also are anyway coming more relaxed about the situation in the light of their position in Yemen, in the light of their position in Lebanon, and now recently what has happened in Palestine and the outcome of the confrontation of the Palestinian with the Israeli regime, which was a vivid example of back down of Israel. What was called the Abraham peace, or what was called the deal of the century, now has been anyway with less meaning. So Saudi Arabia also has come to a very good level of understanding that peace is a subject of the region, and the countries of the region are the element and competent elements to compromise on common goals and common issues. We are hopeful that we can finalize differences with Saudi Arabia soon.
Thank you, Mashallah Shakir Saab, for your response to Mushahid Hussain Saab's question. I have mentioned my point of view that I only remember Mashallah Shakir Saab as ambassador since 1991. I entered into journalism over 3 decades, because you have been very proactive in people-to-people contact and organizing very inclusive cultural events here, and you were always available. My question is, was it your own initiative, or was it the foreign policy of Iran at that moment? And because afterwards we don't see any such kind of social contact and cultural events, they are inclusive and people-to-people contact in Pakistan. So is it, it depends on the individuals, or it was the friendly policy of Iran at that moment. Shakir Sahab.
Thank you, sir, for your compliments and warm words, first of all. Look, I was one of the ambassadors who could comprehend and speak to some extent Urdu. So this was one of the reasons. But the policy of our country towards Pakistan has not changed during the time. I mean, everybody has to tap the potentials which are available at his hand. If somebody is unable or anyway come short of the taking potentials into his hand, that is not the, we should not blame the government of Iran or the other side, the government of the host country. When I was in Pakistan, people used to ask me, "आप उर्दू कैसे ये सीखा?" मेरा जवाब यही था कि उर्दू को कोई लोग सीखते हैं काम के लिए, मैं उर्दू सीखता प्यार से। इसीलिए मेरे love towards Pakistan is something undeniable, and with that I could make a good contact with people of Pakistan.
Okay, great. But because over the years, what we have noticed that the Khana Farhang Iran earlier in the 80s and 90s, we have seen a very open to all. But with the passing years, we have seen Khana Farhang like only limited to a few people. Perhaps even like if other people approach to Khana Farhang for collaboration or such kind of initiatives, and I got to know like they are very reluctant, and perhaps it is because of the staff they have here in Khana Farhang Islamabad, or perhaps I don't know what could be the reasons, but the people told me that Khana Farhang is no more very friendly and inclusive. What do you suggest, Shakir Sahab, like in this given situation when your cultural center or Khana Farhang, we call very limited to a limited audience?
Well, sir, I don't think there is any reluctance from our side, but maybe some instruction by the authorities over there that this match of audience or guest invited to Khana Farhang is not appreciated. Maybe that could be one of the reasons, but indirectly we have been told that let it be limited to some extent. And on the other side of the coin also is that we have got a few Khana Farhangs in Pakistan, maybe 5 or 6 Khana Farhangs, and we cannot provide them all with the demand available on the other side. So we have limited ourselves to few Khana Farhangs, like in Rawalpindi and in Lahore and in Karachi, and not more. That is the reason, but I don't see any official instructions from Tehran to our Khana Farhangs in Pakistan to limit their activities. I have not any clue or indication of that.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I invite Dr. Khushbu Ejaz to ask her question, please.
Assalamu alaikum. I would like to ask Ambassador Saab that how do you see the future of Pakistan-Iran relations after the withdrawal of US forces from Afghanistan? And secondly, what will be the prospects of collaboration between Chabahar and Gwadar in near future?
Okay, thank you. Ambassador Shakir Sahab, Dr. Khushbu Ejaz has asked you questions like what is the possibility of collaboration after post-withdrawal of US troops from Afghanistan, one, and secondly, if there is any, what is the possibility of Chabahar and Gwadar port for collaboration? Two things, sir.
Yes, sir. The destiny of Afghanistan has a direct impact on Pakistan and on Iran directly. because we are both the neighbors of the Afghanistan, and no other country has got this much of affinity and connectivity and connection and people and cultural communalities Afghanistan as Pakistan and Iran have. So this is the utmost desire and utmost dictation that we too have to cooperate with each other instead of competition with each other in the field of Afghanistan. So Afghanistan's prosperity would translate to the prosperity of the region, including and on top of the prosperity of Pakistan and prosperity of Iran. But the problem in Afghanistan is the problem of sectarianism, radicalism, and many more, ethnicism and all. So we have to recognize these problems, and we need to somehow be patient with the issues going on. As far as present situation is concerned, the future is not that much clear that what's going to happen, how Taliban and other forces are going to cooperate with the central government. But we have to be ready to discuss with all the owners of the Afghanistan's interest and try to come to some mutual understanding with them. Iran is ready to cooperate with Pakistan in this regard. Iran is ready to have its investment monetarily or maybe on other ways in Afghanistan. And we have already proved that we are for the progress development of Afghanistan. We believe of one theme that I can say. We are a proponent of development of security and security of development in our neighborhood, including Afghanistan. And I think Pakistan also underlines its importance and is on our side to propagate this theme in Afghanistan. In regards with Chabahar and border, we had very good understanding between both the countries. Now, with China coming to scene in Iran with its 25-year strategical plan, I think the CPEC would complement the China's plan on Iran. The CPEC is another means and linkage between Iran and Pakistan and other powers of the region, including China, are very much interested. Chabahar can help whether to upgrade its position, whether can help Chabahar to have a better performance. We are already going to supply electricity to Gwadar, so Gwadar is important for us as Chabahar is important for us, and Chabahar should be important for Pakistan. So we can both jointly upgrade the position of navigation and maritime activities in the region.
Okay, sir, last question to you, because I don't see at the moment, I don't know. I have asked also Dr. Sommer, like if the Iran's Cultural Council is there, but still waiting for reply. Meanwhile, like we can take the opportunity of your presence. One more question from my side, and that is with the first withdrawal of from the air base in Afghanistan, we have seen a rise in the insurgency. What do you think, how Iran can help Afghanistan and Pakistan to combat or to face the challenge of rising insurgency in Afghanistan and on the borders of Pakistan? Please go ahead, sir.
Well, we very much understand the suffering of insurgency and radicalism and extremism by our Pakistani brothers and sisters, as we have been also the victims of the same in Iran. Daesh is an operator in Afghanistan now, and the Taliban, to a lesser extent, has been active, but there are two differences in the nature of Taliban and Daesh. Daesh is an important element, as an imported element to Afghanistan, but Taliban are locals of Afghanistan. So that I think if we really jointly try to understand the viewpoints of Taliban, there is some hopes and some ways to go forward. And to my understanding from the position of Taliban and the Pakistani government, I think they have proved a high level of obedience from the Pakistan government and authorities. So in this way, Pakistan should lead, and we try to cooperate with that team. And if at all it requires any initial exchange of views, I think Iran is ready to exchange these views with Islamabad. Before going to an end, the name Khushbu reminds me of two Persian words, Khush and Bu. Both are Farsi terms, and the combination of that means fragrance. I congratulate Dr. Khushbu Ejaz for having this name, and I congratulate Urdu language for adopting this word from the Persian language.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ambassador Shakri, for your insight to different issues and responding to different questions. If we have more questions, then I'll get back to you. Thank you so much for joining. And
should I be online yet?
I will call you back, like if we have more questions.
Okay.
I will, yeah, thank you.
Call me back if you have got more questions.
Okay, okay, sir. Thank you, Ambassador Shakri. Thank you. Ambassador Shakri just spoke about different aspects of Pakistan-Iran relations. We have concluded with some his talk with some strategic aspect as how we can combat or face the challenge of rising insurgency. Now I would like move on to Lieutenant General Asadurrani Sahab. He's around, yes. Asadurrani Sahab, are you around? Yes. Yes, he is very much here. And who else can give us insight to this Afghanistan issue and the possible role of Pakistan-Iran collaboration? And while we having also very collaboration and connectivity with China and improving relations with Russia. General Durrani Sahab, would you please brief us how Iran and Pakistan can have a strategic collaboration to meet to face such challenges that are rising up now? Durrani Sahab.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me also congratulate you for getting just the right group for this very important subject. Setting of the stage could not be done better than our Senator Mushahid said. He always does it comprehensively very well. When it comes to Master Durrani, I mean, despite the fact that I believe that in any seminar, you should not get more than one Durrani. Because one of them is quite enough, to mess up the muddle of the affairs. But in case of Asif Durrani, in case of Asif Durrani, I'll make an exception, and the reason will come very soon in a few minutes' time. When it comes to Ambassador Safi, I mean, I can all that I can say is that I also recall very fondly so many nice interactions that one had when he was there. A word about Riham Khan, who has yet to speak. I know she's going to give us the big picture. Last time when we were deep in the quagmire of Afghan affairs, she talked about the new great game. Oh, that's very good. So I'm sure it will come. And so, these aspects will be highlighted by all the others who are waiting in the line. My role is only just to fill in the blanks, especially from the military point of view, how I have seen these developments. Right from the beginning, we used to call Iran the relief zone. Instead of trying to now define the technicalities of it, I think it is a role that Iran has done once. And that is the role that we also have in mind. Remember, once Iraq, under great threat and stress, moved its air assets to Iran. In the process, I think Iran got 2 air forces, but that was certainly not the idea. The idea was that you should have in the region places where you can disperse your strategic assets. It was actually formalized by one of our very wise predecessors, a civilian one to my great regret. But he's the one, Aslam Khattak, who understood these things so very well. And he made a proposal, Afghanistan, Pakistan. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto took the proposal, had Iran included in it, and took it to the Shah. And Shah, you can imagine, the higher royalty react. And he said, so who is going to head this? Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, whatever arrangement it will be, union or confederation. And Bhutto, the wise man that he was, all that he said was, you are the king of kings. Who else will do it? You see, these people were so wise. Previously, we had agreed that if it was only going to be Afghanistan, Pakistan, then it should be the Shah of Afghanistan. But that's also, something clever that you can do. These things did not happen at that time for a number of reasons that we can think of. And I agree with, whoever said, I think Mushad also talked about it. The time may be right, and when the time comes. And that's why I said that Asif Durrani will have a role. I hope we can pre-position him in Quetta to take care of this region. Asif, hopefully I'm making the right recommendation. Now I come over to the pro-revolution Iran. Again, Senator has talked about the pressure that we withstood. And I think it was simply, even though we were, partners, so the United States and Pakistan and Afghanistan, but our response was, no, Iran is our neighbor. Because of you, we are not going to mess up our relationship with our neighbor. In fact, ever since, in Washington, the interests of Tehran are being looked after by the Pakistani embassy. So that is the type of role that we always understood is ours. And usually we withstood pressure and we tried to fulfill that pressure. Let me quickly go on to the post-Soviet Afghanistan. Again, one had the good fortune of being involved in 3 trilateral rounds, Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. And the idea again was how now, after the Soviet withdrawal, we can manage it. And here I must say that the thing did not work out because after the revolution, the Iranians were so excited with the success of their revolution, they thought Afghanistan can be tailored according to the Iranian models. These besieged forces and all sorts. We tried our best to say, no, it's not going to be possible. We'll be very happy if we can restore Afghanistan to its original shape, what Ahmad Shah Durrani, another Durrani, had in mind. But it did not work out at that time. By now, we know after this invasion by the United States, all the countries in the region have understood what it is about. And there, I think someone else has also talked about it. But I think initiative was taken by Pakistan. We did something about Jandullah. Remember Jandullah and Vigi? And in the combined operation, we tried to, scuttle the efforts again of the outsiders who were paying this organization to create problems in both sides of the borders, but especially in Iran. Now, I suppose people have said that we have positioned ourselves well to now meet the end game after the Soviet withdrawal, Pakistan, Iran, Turkey, China, and Russia. So that's a very good arrangement. And if they have worked, if they've done their homework, I suppose we need not be worried too much about what happened after the full withdrawal. But even then, as I said, someone else is going to talk about the big picture, the real problem, rivalry between China and United States, and how that is going to be taken care of. I think Ram and some others will talk about it. I have to, George, just before I finish, because so many things have been talked about, concede that on IPP, we used to call it the peace pipeline. India got out for its own reason, and I said good riddance, because I think both Iran and Pakistan have their interest. We will make it happen. But in the meantime, the old spine that I've talked about that used to withstand pressures, that was weakened, even though the Russians were quite prepared to help us. But at that time, people chickened out, and we did not fulfill our part of the deal. So Pakistan turned out to be the weak link in as far as the pipeline's implementation was concerned. Oh, well, about the balancing that we have been trying to do between our relationship, our relationship with Iran and Saudi Arabia, that is known. We did it reasonably well. MBS, the upstart man, has messed again, created more problems, going into Yemen and doing some other funny things. And that created difficulties for us. But even then, if we recall, that was the only time I recall that in the parliament, the Pakistani parliament, unanimously agreed that we are not going to send troops to Yemen. We are not going to do anything which will be not acceptable to our very precious neighbor. And we did that. On Kuala Lumpur, when we didn't go, I was a little unhappy, but I think in the meantime, we probably have also passed that stage. I had another point, but I think the environment is so good that I should not talk about it too much. But I think a group of such experts should not ignore that there may be a very small number of people who, because of their own cussedness and bigoted nature, will keep on creating this so-called sectarian divide. They will raise these issues. People of Pakistan are quite relaxed, but some people who have, anything to do with the decision making, they at times take these things too seriously. Seriously, yes, as long as you can ensure that they have been taken care of and not allowed to spoil the big environment. I think that should be enough for the time being, and grateful. Looking forward to continued useful discussion on the subject. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant General Durrani Saab. Anyone like to ask any question to General Durrani, please?
I have a question.
Sir, please.
General Saab, a very clear presentation. I totally agree with what you have said, and especially about the parliament. I was one of those who also drafted that resolution, and we took a very clear position which was in a national interest, although some countries were offended by that. Do you think that the Afghanistan factor was the main factor why the relationship between Pakistan and Iran could not become closer after the Soviet military withdrawal from Afghanistan in 1989? But then we should have coordinated more closely, Iran and Pakistan together on Afghanistan to bring peace. But then we ended up supporting opposing factions. We were with the Taliban, they were with the Northern Alliance. Or there were other factors also impeding Pakistan-Iran security cooperation, generally and specifically on Afghanistan. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a very important question. And for me, it is very crucial to try and answer it as objectively as possible, because I was a part of that, especially in Tehran when the three parties met. And as I indicated, that I think some people did not understand, we do not understand, or not many of us understand Afghanistan. In Iran, the lack of understanding as to what now the new Iran was, new Afghanistan was, after the Mujahideen, from Peshawar-based and Quetta-based were there, that what would be their role and what would be their limitations. We actually took the initiative despite no, not outsiders, but some of the Afghan factions too were upset. And they said, well, we understood that at that time, during the resistance, Iran was busy with its own revolution and could not give us the due support. But should we now concede that bigger role that Iran wants? And we said, it's not a question of that. As long as the two of us, the outsiders, can agree on the broad framework and force, the Afghans that we can influence to go ahead and find that consensus. I talked about, Ahmed Shah Durrani's formula, 1747, that grand bargain or the grand consensus, and we used to talk about, you remember, the broad-based government. As long as we can, make these Afghans, this message very clear, that together, if you decide something, it's going to be acceptable to us. That was the only one. As far as, the problem was, a small little bit was because of Mosseli's group, but that was taken care of. And I must say at that time, Mohsen Rezai came to our help because some people, on the Foreign Office side were not favorably inclined towards that breakaway faction that came to Peshawar. But Mohsen Rezai helped us, and we did manage to have a meeting. But that agreement between the two countries, that how we were going to handle it, and as I said, we were not going to impose a solution. But imposing a solution on Afghans in the best of times was very difficult. And to telling them that now we have a new, paradigm which exists, which probably is working very well in Iran, it does not mean that it will also work in Afghanistan. So that probably was the breaking point. We continued after that understanding, but the opposition, this is something that happened in Afghanistan so many times. The regional countries do find their own interest because of the groups that straddle their respective borders, and because of that, they take sides. But taking side in Afghanistan has always been a bad idea, and that is perhaps what scuttled it. But I know, which has a mischievous smile that I can see, but frankly, the outsiders had no role at that time. They were happy to get out. And I said, even the United States at that time, we were quite happy that they were out. Not that they were leaving it and so on and so forth. We were happy they were out because they would have, in any case, muddied the water even a little more. So no outside influence, it was all the internal dynamics of these three countries.
Thank you, General Durrani Saab. Dr. Some, would you like to ask any question to General Durrani Saab, please? Unmute your mic, like if you have any comments or your question, because
I think this is really useful. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much, General Durrani Saab, for your wonderful thoughts and insight to the future interventions that could be done to have peace in the region. Now it's time to request Dr. Some Muravati. She is Director of South Asian Studies at the Tehran International Studies and Research Institute. Dr. Some, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to have me. First of all, again, I really like to apologize because of this mistake happened. I don't like to punish that. In Iran, because of filtering, I'm a big problem with some platforms, same as Zoom. So I'm really sorry about the problems happen. And it's really honor for me to be in a webinar with Mr. Senator Mushahid Hussain, Mr. Ambassador, and Mr. Asif Durrani, Mr. Asad Durrani. It's really, really my honor to be a webinar with you. First of all, I go to my topic. I really like to mention some point. Same as some points, my honor webinar colleague mentioned that in Iran and Pakistan, because we don't touch and feel any concerns and any problem with each other, maybe because of that, we use our energy to focus on other side of our foreign policy. For example, in Pakistan, you use all of your energy to focus on Kashmir, on India, on Afghanistan, and in Iran, we use all of our energy to focus on Iraq border, on the Saudi Arabia, on Persian Gulf, and everything. It's, I think, one of the most important points that this negligence about these two countries in the side of both of us mentioned that we have a lot of similarity to boost our cooperation about culture, about politics, about heritage, about everything. But this step of relationship, I think it's not satisfied, and it's not satisfaction between two countries. I speak about Iran as a researcher, and now I just listen about the politician from Pakistan and politician Mr. Shakir about Iran, but let me to speak as a researcher from Iran, because I'm not in a position with a politician. I really like to confess some point, because I think, first of all, we have to accept our possibility, our limitation, and our knowledge about each other. In Iran, always we really respect for our Pakistani politician negotiator. You know, we are believe that Pakistani politician is really grateful negotiator. And it is one of the big point always in Iran when we want to analyze about Pakistan foreign policy. We mentioned that one of the most important point in Pakistan is the power of that country's politician, because they are really good negotiator. In a different point, we can see in a different problem with different crisis, they can keep their interest in a negotiate. And the other point I think we need to speak and mention is in Iran. I think our Pakistan Studies Desk in Tehran University and Tehran Institute, it's really newly. Our researcher and our person who speak about Pakistan, they are belong to our foreign minister. For example, same as Mr. Shakiri, Mr. Mahdi Abadi, and other Iranian politician who has a mission in Pakistan. And about a researcher and professor who work in Iran about Pakistan, it's really our weak point. So in Iran, we are start about, I think, 3 or 4 years, start to train Iranian student, Iranian researcher, and pursue them to work on Pakistan exactly about their thesis. So I think in that point, we are really like to have and need to have inter-elite connection, you know, about politician, we have this connection, but about elite, about people, I think this is our weak point. About Pakistani side, about Iran side, about different Iranian, Pakistani, I think university teams, and we need to connect each other, speak and understand each other in a good way, not in eyes of, for example, foreign institute eyes. I'm in Iran, just read Washington Institute or Rand Institute to understand Pakistan, you know, just read their reports. I think if we work on this negligence, we can work more and more, because if our politician and your politician want to work on our relation and boost our cooperation, need to good data. I think it is one of the important points about our relation. And another point, I think Mr. Dorani, our former ambassador, mentioned about the some most important and influential elements between Iran and Pakistan. I think, as you know, we have some important facts and factors between Iran and Pakistan. It's not important and it's not belong to two countries, just about other actors in a region and in trans region. USA, India, Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, Israel, it's some point and some actors that always influence Iran and Pakistan relation. As you know, as Mr. Shakeri mentioned, we have in some different international organizations support each other about Kashmir, about sanction, about Iran. Both countries support each other, but about some point, for example, Iran understand Pakistan limitation and some Pakistan needs to negotiation and have relation with Saudi Arabia, with USA, and some same problem with Afghanistan. But I think in this time, both of Iran and Pakistan need to have continuously speak with two countries politicians to speak about their needs and how they look at each other and how they expect from each other. I think one of the important points about Iran and Pakistan, it's this point, because just we look at each other, we
the connection is disturbed, I think. We can't hear Dr. Sumaya Murawati. Yeah. We cannot do anything about it. I'm told that that is the connection is disturbed from her side. This is it, and we the crux of her presentation has we have listened to. Now I would request like anyone like ask question about it to our panelists, because no. And do we have Irani cultural counselor around? Iran's cultural counselor? No, I don't see. I don't see there is a cultural counselor. Please, Sayyid Muntazir Mahdi Sahab, you have raised your hand. If you have any question to ask, please go ahead. And,
yes, sir, I have a question to Senator Mushahid Hussain Sahab.
Ji. Please go ahead.
Since Assalamu alaikum, Mushahid Sahab, since you have talked about Kashmir vis-a-vis Iran's position, I am from Kashmir, and what I have observed in Indo, as far as Iran's position on Kashmir is concerned, I have observed that it's only depends on how the relations of Delhi, Tehran are. When the relations are very tough or hostile, Iran comes up with the human rights issues of Kashmir. When the relations are normal between Delhi and Tehran, Iran takes it as it is an internal issue of Kashmir. So I feel that Iran just created a lever in the region. Can Mushahid Sahab?
Okay, thank you, Mahdi Sahab. Thank you. Okay, Mahdi Sahab's question has reached to us, and before Mushahid Sahab answer to it, I would request Dr. Sumaya Murawati. She is connected again.
Yeah.
Please complete your presentation, Dr. Sahaba.
Thank you so much. Sorry, my internet lost. And my key point is Iran and Pakistan need and have to know each other again. I think Iran and Pakistan see each other from others actors' view, you know? For example, about Afghanistan, we speak with each other. About Kashmir, we speak with each other. About Saudi Arabia, Israel, about US. But I think we need to work in a different level. As you know, for example, our colleague mentioned about the capacity of connecting between Iran and Afghanistan. Always we speak about Chabahar and Gwadar. I think another point we can work on it, it's Iran railway capacity. As you know, Zahedan and Kuwaite, I don't know the pronunciation in Urdu is correct or not. In Farsi, we say Kuwaite. It has a connection, railway between Zahedan and Kuwaite and between Zahedan and our border with Turkey. So Iran have a good capacity to connect Pakistan and link Pakistan to other regions. And Pakistan have a good capacity to connect Iran to other region, you know? It's one of the points we can work on it. And the other point is the connection between people and people between Iran and Pakistan. We just focus on one side. The Shia Pakistani people as a pilgrim coming in Iran to go to Iraq or go to Iran, some shrine cities, same as Mashhad and Qom and Shiraz. But I think it is just one level and we can work to another level, for example, tourism, Iranian tourism coming to Pakistan and know Pakistan in different side. In Iran, as some of my Pakistani friends come in Iran and Pakistan as a Iqbal Lahori. We know Pakistan as a cricket. We know Pakistan as a some specific name, same as Lahore, Kuwait, Islamabad, but it's not enough. I think if we have some program to connect Iranian Pakistani people to each other, we can facilitate the way our politician can work, you know, in Turkey, about Turkey and Iran, about Azerbaijan and Iran, about Armenia and Iran. The first point that make two countries tied a very good way is the connection between two people, between Iranian and Turkish people, between Iranian and Azeri people. I think we need to make and create this level of relationship between two countries. The level of relationship between Iranian university and elite with Pakistani relationship, Pakistan university. I think we just focus on some level of relation, and it is just politics, about economy, about culture, about a different side of relation. We have neglect of connectivity between two countries. And I think if we work on it, we can hope in the future can a very, very good relation between two countries. I'm really happy to have me. And if any question, I'm ready. And again, I'm sorry because of the disconnectivity and I lost my word. I hope this type of webinars continue and you in Pakistan help our experts in Iran to speak and have a good connectivity between our elites and your elites. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Shaba, for your presentation on And Aga Murtaza Mehdi Sahab, would you like to repeat your question? I would ask you to ask your question to Dr. Murawati sir.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum, Sumaya ma'am.
Please go ahead.
Ma'am, my question is about Iran's position on Kashmir. What I have seen, because I belong to Kashmir, what I have seen that whenever Iran's position on Kashmir depends on Tehran and Delhi relation. When the relations are good, Iran sees that it's an internal issue of India. When the relation between Delhi and Tehran turn hostile, or India tilts towards US more, Iran racks up Kashmir issue as a international issue, or racks up its human rights violation.
Okay. Your question has reached. Thank you.
Let me to don't accept your point, because let me to during you ask your question, I searched on net to speak on a point. Last year, during the Kashmir crisis, our supreme leader speak about Kashmir. It's not the one time, and our foreign minister, Mr. Zarif, most of the time speak about Kashmir. Your point is Iran position about Kashmir depends on the relation between Iran and India, yeah?
Yes.
But I'm, as a researcher in Iran, when I see the point, I'm not in a situation. I'm not in a situation that accept your point, because in Iran, as a researcher, not as a politician, we all always see that our politician, our cleric, always see Kashmir crisis as a some Muslim brotherhood problem, you know. So I, as an Iranian, not as a politician, as an Iranian, never see a statement from Iranian politician to support India. I always see, for example, now I open the news about our supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei. He, in our cabinet, he sent a letter to Mr. Rouhani, our president, to work on Kashmir, and called the Pakistani politician to mention that Iranian people and Iranian politicians stay with Pakistan about Kashmir, and this is our red line about Kashmir.
Okay.
This is our form, how can I say, official statement.
Okay.
So what's happened, I don't know, but about official statement.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Murawati Sahib. Asad Durrani Sahib, Ambassador Asad Durrani has to leave, and before he leaves, I would like to ask him a question. If you are around, Asad Durrani Sahib, please. Like in the recent years, we have, Durrani Sahib, in the recent years, we have seen a decline of very cultural collaboration, or like people-to-people contact. Do you think like that is how it could be improved to like address the challenges that we are facing? And secondly, this is again, we have seen the Muslim countries, they have their own diplomatic interests wherever they are, and definitely they should be. In the coming days, we will be having more strategic challenges post-withdrawal of the troops. How do you foresee the connection between both the people-to-people and cultural contacts and the strategic collaboration? Do you see any relation between it?
Yeah, thank you, Munir Sahib. I think cultural relationships are already there. Language is not a problem. Most of the Pakistanis who visit Iran. And when you listen Farsi, it sounds familiar. And then it's very easy to pick up. So are our Iranian friends, when they come here, Urdu, if they just concentrate, they can pick up. Like Ambassador Shakiri has been fluent because he just focused on Urdu. Interaction, as I said, there's a great potential in tourism, bilateral tourism, but there's one factor. Unfortunately, we don't have those imamzadas or those pilgrimage places in Pakistan. So the number of tourists from Iran is, as far as religious pilgrims are concerned, is non-existent. Then normal tourists, they are very less. The reason being that our Iranian friends, they prefer West. So they go there. And another important thing is that for Pakistanis, normal Pakistanis are going on that if they go to Europe or America, if there's a stamp of Iranian visa, so many questions are asked. Same as I heard in Iran, our Iranian friends saying if we go to Pakistan, then American and Western countries, they ask us, why did you visit Pakistan? There may be some truth in it, but maybe in some exceptional cases, those questions might have been asked. But if you look at Iran, almost 3 million Western tourists, they visited Iran in 2018, at least the statistics which I know. So here, I think there's a need and then another, the kind of propaganda about Pakistan, which has done that it is not safe. So that has also adversely affected tourism, not only from Iran, but other countries as well. Although now it is picking up and there's a rising graph of tourists coming to Pakistan. So this tourism thing that in fact progresses with the passage of time, with the facilities available and the publicity made, and most importantly, connections available, flight connections availability to and from Pakistan. That is very important. So those factors need to be addressed. And then we also have to create budget hotels where every tourist may not be rich, but they may be keen to visit. And so we have to cater for those tourists as well. So this is very important that we have to address. As regards the withdrawal of American troops from Afghanistan, overall, I think there is support for the withdrawal of American troops in the neighborhood. Iran supports that, so is Russia and China, and Pakistan also supports that withdrawal. The main question is, what after withdrawal? Would there be again competition like we had after the withdrawal of the Soviet troops, when Iran wanted to have its own area of influence in Afghanistan, and Pakistan wanted to have its own area of influence in Afghanistan. Russia and China also did, so did India. So that was the case. But now I think a lesson learned after the 9/11 is that when Iran was opposed to Taliban's rule, so they did well. But once Americans were sitting next door to Iran, I think then Iranian might be running second thoughts that it was better that Taliban were ruling Afghanistan rather than America sitting next door to them. So I think by the withdrawal of American troops from Afghanistan, the Iranian side would be comfortable that at least Americans are not. And then I think there's an understanding between Iran and Taliban during the past decade and so, which is why I think there has been some collaboration between Taliban and Iran, and which is why that the Iranian border, Iran's border with Afghanistan has been safe because I think Taliban did not do anything, and Americans were also cautious. So I think this has been a very good diplomacy conducted by Iran. So, but for Pakistan, the relationship is a bit different because the Afghans, the kind of accessibility Afghans have into Pakistan, that is not available to them in their neighborhood. Almost 50 to 60,000 Afghans, they straddle the border every day for work, for business and all that without visas. This facility to Afghans is not available in the neighborhood. Iran does not allow that. So are the Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, or China. So, and then the kind of divided tribes which exist between Afghanistan and Pakistan, that does not exist in neighborhood in that manner, which we per se, we consider like Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan, or for that matter, Iran or China. So there's a difference. So in that aspect, I think Iran also realizes that what kind of a symbiotic relationship Pakistan has with the, especially the divided tribes, so are other neighborhoods. But now a new trend has emerged at the political plane in the region, whereby all the regional countries who happen to be a part of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So I think now there is a realization that let's make this region peaceful. And for that, peace in Afghanistan is a must. And when that happens, I think that is why I think Iran and Pakistan also will have to reach to an understanding whereby they have to focus on the peace rather than playing favorites. So I think in this way, it would be a win-win situation. Thank you, Manoj.
Okay, sir, thank you very much. And before I go to Riham Khan Saiba, who has joined us from London. She is a broadcaster and geopolitical commentator and political activist. I would request Lieutenant General Asad Durrani Saab to stay with us for concluding remarks. And before going to Riham Khan Saiba, I would also request Dr. Sumaya Murawati that unfortunately we could not have Iran's cultural counselor. So next time we should have Iran's cultural counselor and some other cultural practicing people from Tehran and other parts of Iran. And we would also like to have the cultural practitioners from Pakistan so that we could discuss a possible collaborative cultural intervention on both sides to have people and cultural practitioners on the same page. With this, I think I should go without wasting any more time to Riham Khan Saiba. Riham Khan Saiba, how do you see the entire phenomena of Pakistan and Iran relationship as a political and social and cultural phenomena?
Thank you, Munir Saab. Assalamu alaikum to everyone, and kind regards to General Asad Durrani Saab, particularly who's been so kind and so generous with his compliments. I'm certainly not, an authority at all. But what I was going to talk about was actually on sort of 2 points that I wanted to raise, and I'm very encouraged by listening to all of the speakers, and I don't say this just to pay lip service, but I was very encouraged to speak, to hear the ambassador, His Excellency Asad Durrani Saab speak, and of course Mushahid Hussain Saab is a huge guidance for anyone who's listening, a huge I suppose a large domain of experience as is General Asad Durrani Saab and His Excellency, the ambassador who we had on WhatsApp. And of course, Sumaya has made some very good points. And that was actually more or less what I was going to talk about. So basically what I wanted to talk about was perception and propaganda. So when we talk about a worldview and what is, what we need to improve and where we've gone wrong, I think many of the speakers today have actually put that forward. I'm just going to articulate the same points, but expand on them. So for example, when we talk about perception and propaganda, one of the things which was very encouraging when I was listening to Ambassador Asad Durrani Saab was, of course, as General Saab says, that he really should be posted in Quetta because we need people with local and micro knowledge about the areas that they serve in. And one of the things that he touched upon, and I'm just going to expand this for the audience here, is the fact that we are looking forward and looking towards a more collaborative future, a future that is based on a strong coalition with Iran on many areas, particularly trade. And what is disturbing to people in the local region, the Iran-Pakistan border, is of course, it is a cause for concern for the Pakistani government because of the illegal trade that happens across a very, very porous border. But the fact that the 950 kilometer or so permanent barrier that has been proposed is something that is not going to go down well with the locals on either side. And there is a way forward. Of course, the government has suggested these three border markets, but I think there's a lack of trust on both sides of the people on the border, because of course that illegal trade, the oil smuggling is what I'm referring to here, is something that a lot of people depend on our side of the border as well. So this is very important. I can't highlight this enough, that we have to speed up those efforts to legalize border markets.
I think internet connection is disturbed. Yes. Reham Khan Sabak. This is really terrible that we are having IT glitches today.
It is unfortunate, I say. It's unfortunate, I say, because we should have thought of this ourselves, as General Saab pointed it out, that Aslam Khan Khattak Saab, someone that I grew up around, he was my next door neighbor, wasn't perhaps politicians who did have a lot of authority, very much similar to people like Asif Durrani Sahab. Aslam Khan Khattak Sahab was posted in Afghanistan from a very young age, from Kabul to Iran to Tehran, and he had a real grip on affairs, but perhaps he wasn't listened to at the time. There have been many other people who I can, who have been major influences in my life as a child, who introduced me to this. But how many Pakistani children or how many Iranian youngsters are that lucky as I was? So one of the things which is very simple is through cinema, as Asif Durrani Saab pointed it out, because I think the war of the words can be fought on the silver screen. We have Iranian screenwriters, poets, wonderful female directors, and a lot of artists who perhaps do not have enough avenues to work on because of a strained US relationship, because of the fact that travel is a huge problem, which Asif Durrani Saab pointed out. I know for a fact that if you travel on a British passport, you might perhaps be a little bit luckier in Iran than if you travel with a Pakistani passport. It is genuinely a problem. I know that we choose to travel not on a Pakistani passport to avoid being avoid the passport being stamped. I think that it is very important to then change that perception and propaganda through cinema, through giving artists and experts in Iran the opportunity to work in Pakistan, and this collaboration could work beautifully. We must make sure that any good that happens in either country must be propagated. The good is not propagated enough. What the foreign powers have been doing for a very long time is that their marketing strategy is very good. So I can't stress this enough, that if you write a good book and you're not marketing it, nobody knows about this, nobody knows that it exists, it's going to gather dust on a shelf. Not many people will be motivated to pick it up. So we have to work on changing the perception through countering propaganda. Cinema is a huge tool for this, because books, perhaps there are not many readers left in the world, but video messaging is far more important. I think this is very important because we have this opportunity because of the China-Iran deal. One of the things that was mentioned here, and I want to expand on it again, is the fact that why we've not been consistent. When you listen to people in Iran, when you listen to people in Balochistan, I've traveled the length and breadth of Balochistan, and I have seen for myself the desperate lack of employment, the lack of energy, the lack of opportunities in Balochistan. And I think that this has been neglected for a very long time. We are plagued with proxy wars in Balochistan. I'm sure that our Iranian counterparts will complain of the same. So the gas pipeline or the peace pipeline, as it was marketed, I think I would go further and say that there hasn't been political will for it. What are the reasons for that? Perhaps General Asadurrani Saab can expand on that a little bit more. But I find that now is the time to not drag our feet on this peace pipeline. It is linked to everything that Pakistan should aim to be. And I think that Iran has not had a friend in a very, very long time. And Pakistan can be that friend to Iran, that friend who provides a transit route for trade, for oil, for gas, for progress. And I think that position of being a transit hub through facilitating Iran and China and other countries who may want to be a part of it, hopefully, as we now have a very positive direction given by our current Chief of Army Staff about a possible peace process and peace, good vibes towards India as well. This peace pipeline will be key. Funding has been an issue. I think, again, Pakistan has to refocus and establish and renegotiate, more importantly, the terms of how you will be a transit hub, which could be beneficial to Pakistan, but also to Iran. And that, I think, we have not done enough. As General Asadurrani Saab put it, perhaps the time is right now. The time has come before as well, but I think, again, unfortunately or fortunately, it has come because of a different civilization, because of China. But we should seize the opportunity. We should collaborate on it. I think that this is going to be so much more important than anything else that we do. And the reason is that once we become a transit hub, we will open the doors to peace. We will open the doors to better collaboration, to make sure that people are encouraged to travel. You're absolutely right. Sumaya said that it should not be based on religious travel only. This is also part of the propaganda where Pakistani people or Pakistani youngsters think the only time you visit Iran is if you are a Shia by origin and if you have to make a holy pilgrimage. They do not understand. They have not read or have been left out from learning from Iqbal's poetry, from learning the fact that I'm a huge fan of the architecture again in Iran. I mean, if I could build a house in Pakistan, I think I would build it on the Iranian historical architecture, because that is something that our Pakistani youngsters are not familiar with. The reason they go to the West is because the West sells the products so well. They sell processed food so much better than we can sell Iranian dry foods. We can't sell. And so I think that this is what is most important. I think that the idea that we were talking about, or at least General Asadurrani Saab was talking about, the idea of strategic assets, I think what I would go further with is that we know in Pakistan, who want to know, that Pakistan has covertly tried to facilitate and support Iran, be it with the Pakistani embassy in the US, be it on certain places. But I think now we should and we can, more importantly, we can come out and overtly support Iran. I think the tide is changing. What we have seen with the softening of stance, or perhaps even a disassociation of the US, I think that this is the time where we can actually encourage youngsters to make the journey from Chabahar to Gwadar. It's actually a shorter journey than it is for me and to visit my children in the UK. It's a 2-hour, 40-minute journey on the coastal stretch, on the Makran Coastal Highway. Our children don't know that. And I think that this is the shift where we have to, through our textbooks, through our productions, through our words that our politicians choose, through people like Mushahid Hussain Saab or even Asif Durrani Sahab, who have served in these areas, we have to present the true picture. So the propaganda that we have been sold, that we've been selling for ages, has to be now countered. Whether it's the peace pipeline, it will need funding. And people need to realize our position why we cannot possibly in Pakistan do it without funding. We don't have the funds. Other regional partners will have to understand our position as a strategic transit hub and to support us, facilitate us through financial support. But in Pakistan, we have to focus on our words, our political will, our intentions, and we have to overtly, I think, support this Iran-Pakistan friendship. That's me done.
Okay, thank you very much, Rehan Khan Sahib. More on the social and cultural side of it, and young people and the cultural practices. This is what like before you start, before you speak, I ask you next time we should have this kind of exclusive discussion on it, to the mechanism that we can adopt for such kind of engagement. And thank you so much, wonderful, Rehan Sahib. Now I would like to request General Retired.
Volume certainly gone down.
So, yeah, for concluding remarks, sir. Please go ahead, sir.
So you were not very audible. Is it possible that now?
Sir, can you hear me?
I can hear you now, but I think lately there was some problem with the volume. But if it is about me, please say that again.
Okay. You are audible, sir, and I have a request to you to please have. We would like to have your concluding remarks about the webinar today and what is the take home.
If anyone has heard, Marisa, a little better.
Asad Durrani sir, your concluding remarks. What is take home?
Look, I must confess that there has been generally a problem with my hearing because I used to serve with the guns and so became a deaf. But lately also, for practical reasons, I used to play deaf. I haven't heard. But in this particular case, if I have understood correctly from your movement of lips,
right,
you want me to say a few things, isn't it?
Yes, I want to. Shall I give you a call because I want you to say a concluding remarks. Concluding remarks.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, sir. You are.
I'm audible. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Now, in a way of summing up, frankly. Yeah, in a way of summing up. Many years ago, one was sitting quietly in my enclave in the tribal areas of Rawalpindi, had made my peace with so many different things and suddenly got a call. There is a new girl in town and she's conducting certain discussions on international affairs. And the name is Rehan Khan. And she wants to hold a discussion on Ukraine. I said, for God's sake, who nowadays in Pakistan, with so much happening, eastern, western border within, would think of Ukraine? So just in appreciation of that selection of that subject, because it was, for me, once upon a time, a very important one, because I saw the collapse of the Soviet Union sitting here and then the end of the Cold War a little later. But so I went along and found out that, yes, someone likes to study, likes to read up before holding the discussion. So that is, I think, the background we have. And maybe for that reason, I may have said a couple of things, but you've been very generous with, pointing out a few things that I may have said. Before one comes to that particular, it's not very difficult actually to sum up this debate because more or less we now know where we are and what is to be done. But before that, again, it's not a matter of chest beating or self-praise, but it just to happen that one co-authored a book, it created some, waves here and there. But in due course, that thing has been taken care of. Not only taken care of, and I think My friend Asif is also a witness to what has happened later on. We did talk about a structure as to how to take care of India-Pakistan relationship. In the discussion, when the discussion took place, the launching, it was about 3 years ago. I mean, almost to the date, 23rd of May, 2018. This book was launched, the discussion takes place. I was not there, no, for no other reason, because these Sindhi Indians wouldn't give me a visa. They still think that my past sins had not been amply compensated, but I was listening to it. And there in the discussion, Shiv Shankar Menon, a well-known person in the region, the High Commissioner here, later on Foreign Secretary, now and National Security Advisor, there he talked about the way forward, and in that he says, look, listen to General Durrani, what he's talking about, a structure. If we follow that, then I suppose we can try and manage a relationship. A few weeks ago, suddenly people believe, so many people, and I had no reasons to take it seriously, but said, what's the structure or the approach that you recommended in that book? Isn't that being followed by the two sides, the back channels, trying to manage a relationship incrementally and so on? I said, I do not know about that. I like to take the credit, but this is something which has happened so often that you start working on back channel, and I'll tell you why back channel is so important. Also because of what Rehan just said about the perception management. But before that, another suggestion that I made, I mean, it was not not very flippantly, I mean it seriously. If these structures and if we came to certain, right conclusions, the problem is that people at the helm of affairs do not have enough experience, enough knowledge. They are supposed to carry out the policies, but their background, I mean, they're learning on the job. It's only once you have gone through it and later on, like me, reflected over certain periods for a quarter of a century, and then you say, oh God, this was not the way to go about it. This is what we should have done, etc. Now, in our case, people like us are called fired cartridges. Means you've done your things, now go and rest. If you can't play golf, that's all right, but at least you must have grandchildren to play with. Perfectly all right, except that all that experience gets lost. And that is where I was going to suggest that the proposal started with Ashraf Fatak. Now, if it gets implemented, we do not have to create, three countries federation, or for that matter, association, but a certain arrangement, a coordination mechanism would be fine, because that will take care of all these factors that we're talking about, the spoilers. All that is required is you seem to be on the right line, you want to do the peace pipeline, and someone whispers in your ear and says, oh, the big boss will get annoyed, or will be hung by the FETF. This is the new one, the new instrument that they have invented, just to make sure that we don't do anything in our interest. Even when it is legitimate interest, we do not do it. Otherwise, we will do that. Now, this structure is going to take care of and says, go ahead, do the peace pipeline. There is no rule that you are violating by doing that. And I'm talking factually, 2009, 2010, 2011. This was the consensus that we could do our part. But someone was, what we call in the local language, shosha. A shosha comes, and after that, the poor decision maker is seized in stack and says, God knows if something happens, we will lose whatever, but I'll lose my seat. I'll be removed by, like someone else may have been removed for different reasons, but that is the argument that will be given. Now that structure, considering Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iran, something very usefully can be done by a coordinating mechanism placed in Kota. That's the right place, because it takes care not only of the geographical side, but also gets the effect from Afghanistan and Iran very directly, and it knows how to handle it. And when I talked about Asif, he knows both these countries, he's served there. And the most important thing there would be, Rehan, you're right, I think the perception management, how it is done. If the wars were going to be decided on narratives, Pakistan has lost every war. Afghanistan, Kashmir, India, nuclear, everyone was we would have lost if it was to go, because the narrative is highly loaded against us. They will do it for their reasons. But the problem is here, how do you now ensure that you find the right counter? Counter narrative is a very small thing to say, but the right counter, how do you ensure that people will also understand that those things have been done for their reason, but we have our own reason to continue doing or to do something else. Last 20 years, if we were to go only by the pressure and the narrative, we would have burnt our boats with the Taliban long time ago. We hung in there not because you like them, because you know that it is going to be, your neighborhood. This is the strength that they have. This is the weakness that we may have. To manage it, that is where we talked about the back channel in India, Pakistan, that they will manage it. Today, we cannot do it because of Bombay or because of something else. So we will do a couple of other things. Water, for example, in Kashmir. Here we will come up with those things which are practical, which can be done. Just to give you one example, a very small example. You think there are individuals in the three countries who are waiting for the whole thing to be put right before they do their business? No. Enterprises, there is a publisher in Kabul. He's told me that he'll reprint and he'll publish any book in the world that we need. How does he send it to Pakistan? He routes it through Tehran. So that's the conduit. From there it comes. The printing is better, the paper is better, the price, of course, because of the economy of scales is a little more, but it happens. It can be done. So on all these things are to be managed and to be done, to be encouraged. Not because, otherwise, if you go strictly by the rules, no copyrights, no published right, the man has been blackmailed for the last, I don't know how many years. Do you think the Afghans would ever care if they have been blacklisted? Our people are worried of the if we have been blacklisted. That chap, despite of this label, does his business, moves freely between the three countries with visa, but his publishing work is not strictly according to the norm. Example is to how all we can do, the potential is there, people can do, and we'll find the right type of people to get it done. It's not enough to say we should do that or we will have to do it. How do we go about doing it? Making sure that it happens. Only then it will. Otherwise, you say, unfortunately, we will not do it. We had a long wish list that we could not do it. To make things happen, you need some sort of coordination. And that is what I think the ultimate or the final message from me is: do it and you will do it. Otherwise, we can be talking about, moaning, groaning, wailing, wishing. It will be endless. It goes on endless. Especially, the business that Riham left a few years ago. There, every day you will be listening what we must do and, shouting at the top of light, we'll demolish Israel, we will do this thing. And after that, you go back. And that's the end of it. Everyone seems to be happy, but on ground, nothing happens still. And that makes people very comfortable. But I'm not in the business of, comfort zone till some people take up that courage. We'll go to Bosnia. We'll go to Chechnya. We'll go to Kashmir. We'll go to Palestine, not because the government wants it to go. After all, Bosnia took place, and Holbrooke did say Dayton would not have been possible, but for these non-state actors whom everyone was unhappy with, and mostly they were from Iran and Pakistan. So Iran and Pakistan actually liberated Bosnia. Chechnya, something else came in the way, otherwise our people were at it. If I today say, thank God for Hezbollah and thank God for Hamas, there are enough number of people who will probably go gunning all over the place. But the point is that these are those people. If used correctly, if used intelligently, you may still call them non-state actors, but they will not be non-state actors because the state somewhere manages them. But this is the way these games are played. No one is going to tell me that Daesh has not been sponsored. For heaven's sake, I have served long enough in the military, and I know if Daesh were not sponsored and properly protected, it would not have moved the deserts of Iraq openly in these vehicles. Of course it was. Has it served its purpose or not? That I'm not saying, but it is still very useful. Learn a couple of lessons from others, pick up a little bit of courage, heart, and this blame can be passed on, can be outsourced to, let's say, people like Asif and me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Captain Durrani sir, for your opening remarks. We need to learn from others, and of course, we need to have some practical steps taken in the coming days if we want to make a change together in the region. And with this, I would thank you in the absence of Sayed Senator Sayed Travis and Ishaq and Lieutenant Durrani sir. Thank you so much. You are always with us to encourage us and to give us like insight to the strategic influences that we need to have and what we need to learn from our past. And thank you so much, Ambassador Durrani sir, for your wonderful thoughts and how we can move forward on Iran-Pakistan relationship. And Riham Khan, sir, thank you so much for joining from London. And in the absence, we also attend Dr. Mashallah Shakir, Ambassador of Iran to Pakistan, and Dr. Ismail Durrani. Thank you very much for taking lead to conduct this webinar. And I hope that next time we would have more participants and audience from Iran that is missing at this moment. And with this, there was also Pakistan EOP Tehran. But I could guess like it may be like embassy of Pakistan in Tehran. And this connection has been, this participant has been very silent. I believe like if it is the embassy of Pakistan in Tehran, definitely they should not be very silent anymore, and they should be speaking up from heart and soul. And with this, I thank you so much, all the participants who remained with us, despite the webinar took too long because first half an hour was really terrible, like we were not getting connected from Iran, and half an hour is taken more than we said scheduled time, but still I believe like it's worth it because the kind of recommendations and stuff that we got and of course this webinar. Once again, thank you very much. Next Saturday, inshallah, with another topic. Take care of yourself.